Srinivas Dempo, members of the faculty, students, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you, first of all, for inviting me. It's indeed a great honor to talk to all of you. When I was asked to speak, I thought I should talk to you about what is happening on the world and how the world is going to change. And in fact, it's changing right now. To understand that, let me put a little bit of context. About 250 years ago, a seminal event happened in Europe which changed the face of the world at that point of time. And that was the invention of the steam engine. Till then, India and China made up the largest part of the global GDP, around 45%. They were the richest countries in the world. And they were the richest countries because they had a large skilled population. They exported their goods, and the whole world came to them to trade. And that's why the Portuguese indeed came to Goa too. But then, between 1500 and maybe 1750, Europeans traded with South America, took the gold of the Incas and the local people there. They traded with Asia to the Arabs, and they accumulated capital. So when the steam engine was invented, it marked the rise of the Industrial Revolution and the rise of the machine age. Now, human beings could make machines which could do the work of 100 people or 1,000 people. So the rapid expansion of the economy, particularly in Europe, and this led to the rise of Europe, so and so that Europe became the richest part of the world by maybe 1800, 1825. Between 1800 to 1900, Europe dominated the world. They created colonies all across the world. They came and took away the resources of these colonies, subjugated India and China, and became extremely rich. And all this was due to the fact that the Industrial Revolution happened there, and they had accumulated capital by trade with Asia in an earlier era. And that Industrial Revolution gave them access to new kind of weapons which revolutionized warfare and allowed them to conquer the world with a small number of people. And then, of course, in the 20th century, we saw the two great wars that destroyed Europe, and warfare was on an industrial scale. About 16 million people died in the First World War, 60 million people died in the Second World War. And after the war ended in 1945, with the explosion of the atomic bomb in Nagasaki and Hiroshima in Japan, the world embarked on a new era of decolonization and change. But what happened over this last 250 years is the fact that the Industrial Revolution created a global supply chain, a supply chain to connect producers to consumers all around the world. And this meant that people who controlled the supply chain made a lot of money, and the supply chain was through shipping, to railways, to pipelines, through retail, wholesale, banking, insurance, etc. In order for you to sell to anybody around the globe, the supply chain. And people in the supply chain made money because the only way to do business and to grow the economy was to go through the supply chain to reach consumers all around the world. And that became the centerpiece of control. And that's the economic condition where we have grown up in the last 45, 50 years. But then 20 years ago, something happened which is changing all that. And that was the rise of the internet. What is the internet? It's an electronic platform where all of us could interact with each other synchronously or asynchronously, and which has enormous amount of information available to us to search and to use. And anybody joining the platform gets networked to a very large number of people who are using the platform to do very many things. To give some data today about the size of this platform and what it means to all of us, the 7.8 billion people on the planet, out of which 6 billion people have a mobile connection, out of which 5.5 billion people are on the internet, 5 billion people possibly are on social media. But the great majority of people are there on the internet. And through the internet, you can get access to the accumulated knowledge of humankind. All the books that have been written since history began, you can find it on the internet. almost free of cost. You can listen to the best lectures from the best professors. You have enormous amount of education, other videos on the internet. You can do business on the internet globally. You can do banking services. You can get health advices and health advice from the best doctors on the planet. And you can do this asynchronously. Synchronously means what we are doing now in real time. Asynchronously means you can always go at a time of your leisure. So you are open to the world 24/7 through the internet, and all you need is a mobile phone, a smartphone, and a cheap data connection. And that's why today 6 billion people have a mobile connection and 5.5 billion people are on the internet. A large amount of business is being done on the internet. You can imagine what happened when there's a lockdown globally starting last February in China. When the world locked down, people stayed at home to stop the spread of the pandemic. And that meant that people got their supplies and the groceries through e-commerce. They spoke to the doctors through video. Children got education to edtech companies sitting at home in front of the PC or the laptop. You got entertainment to the OTT platform where you saw movies. You got access to music. And you did very many things like play games or possibly do other activities all on the internet. And everybody took to it like ducks take to water. And that changed the way people think and people behave. And suddenly the world was in the midst of the digital revolution. And today the world is in the midst of a digital revolution. Almost everything that we do is driven by the digital world, driven by cheap data, driven by huge capacities in the cloud for storage, driven by artificial intelligence and machine learning, driven by automation, driven by rich video, and driven by bandwidth, which is available to you all across at any point of time. Does India play a great role in this? Yes. Let me give some data. Out of 1.38 billion people in India, there are 1.2 billion mobile phones. 1 billion people have a unique mobile phone. Some have 2 or 3. I'm sure many of you do. And then we have 750 million people on the internet. So somebody tells you in the digital world ranking, India is 35 or 40. Don't believe them, because there are only 2 countries with more than 300 million people on the internet, that is China and India. In fact, you should not compare the small countries like the UK or Germany with India, but compare them with Karnataka or possibly Tamil Nadu, etc. So India has adopted the digital revolution with a vengeance, and today we're seeing enormous amount of work being done. In 2019, the world spent $2 trillion on a world GDP of 82 trillion on digital automation. And this year, they're probably spending 2.5 trillion. Enormous amount of capital and money is going to make the world a very different place. And what has been the impact on the world? If you look at the most valuable companies in the world, the most valuable company is Microsoft, worth 2.4 trillion. 2.4 trillion is just short of the cap of the GDP of this country, which is close to $3 trillion today. And Apple is 2.3. And then we saw that Google or Alphabet crossed $2 trillion. Can you imagine a company with $2 trillion? And all the big digital companies who are digital monopolies make something like $250, $300 billion of profits every year. Suddenly the world has changed in the last 3 years. And everything is gone digital. And unless you're part of it, you'll be lost. Now, what are the implications for everybody when the world goes digital? And what is going to happen in the near future? First of all, when the world goes digital, all our data will be present in the database or in the data structures of the big digital companies. Apple has 2 billion people on its iOS system. Google has 2.5 billion on his Android system. That means everything you do on the web using Apple or Google or an Android device is stored in the database, and all of us have become piece of data. So Google knows what you do, what you eat, what you see, what you read, everything about you. And Google can manipulate your mind and send you things that you don't want to do, but you're forced to do because you believe that's what you want to do. In fact, when you go to Google and search, what Google sends to you as part of the search is what Google wants you to see, not what you want to see, because that's the way it is all structured. So all of us have become piece of data, part of a network, and the network grows with the addition of every single person, and that is becoming more and more powerful. And then the new thing that people are talking about is the metaverse, where all of us will have a digital presence on the web, and the reality between a physical presence and the digital presence is going to merge. And very soon will be offline, online, and we will go in between the two at the switch of a button without thought. If you look at a young child today and see how they use digital technologies and use the internet and manipulate data and do things, you'll be very surprised that they're born to the digital world. Many of us are older. I've seen the world in a very different place, and many of us have changed habits. But for young children today, and almost all of you in school, a large part of what they do is very, very digital, and that is going to continue for a period of time. Now, what has made the digital world come true? The digital world has become big and has come true because of many advances in technology. First of all, the speed of computing has enormously changed. Today, we got high-speed computing, high-speed data available. Most of the data is stored in the cloud. Cloud means aggregation of server capacity in different parts. So you don't have to buy a server. You don't have to set up a data center. All of you can just click, pay a little bit of money, and you're on the cloud. You get almost unlimited capacity at a lower price. And costs have crashed to just 5% of what the data cost was maybe 20 years ago. So the enormous increase in the capacity of computing data, in the capacity of storage, and in the cost of the device. I remember in 1994, we used to buy a Pentium 4 PC, a big optical device for $2,500. Now you can get something 100 times that power, 1,000 times the power for maybe $500. Somebody told me that the Apple new device has more computing power than the Cray supercomputer 7 years ago. That's the kind of strides that computing technology has taken, driven by lower cost, better performance, huge amounts of data available at a very low cost. And today, Indians consume 17 GB of data per person, 17 GB of data for 1 billion people every single month. And 95% of everybody on the internet sees videos. They look at content. They spend 6.5 hours on the internet. I don't know how much time you're spending on the internet. I hope you're not doing more. As young people, you have to go out and play and talk to people and go for long walks and play sports. For God's sake, don't get stuck to your device all the time. It's not good for you. Maybe for older people like, me, I don't want to use other names here. They're not old enough like me. Maybe you need to spend more time inside, but you got to be outside. You are younger and you got to see the mountains and go to the beach and do all the nice, exciting things you do when you're young. So there's an enormous amount of capacity come up. Now we're going to enter into quantum computing, where you're going to have speeds of computing 5x of what you have today. And quantum computing is going to be driven by 5G and 6G. 5G means speed goes up on your mobile device by a factor of 10 times, 20 times, depending on where you are, and costs come down. So download speeds and everything can come down. Second point which I want to talk about is the reason for the change is the rise of automation and artificial intelligence and machine learning. What does it mean? Artificial intelligence is an algorithm, a software written, which sifts to enormous amount of data and which can recognize patterns and do a lot of work that human beings do. Remember, all of us follow patterns. All of us follow precedent. All of us do things which are rule-based. Rule-based means you go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you get the desired result. A machine can be taught to be rule-based and do all that using an algorithm, provided you have enough computing power and you are computing data storage, which is available today very cheap. So people are writing algorithms, and this allows machines to do 60% of the work that human beings can do. For example, if you go to a tech company, you want to do a math problem, all you have to do is go to the portal and start doing the problems, and you'll have a chat bot who will recognize your voice and speak to you like a human-like voice and correct the mistake that you make, because in mathematics, you have to follow certain steps to get the result, right? A plus B squared equals A squared plus B squared, but 2AB, right? So You understand all that, and I'm sure you'll do that well. So there are rules. There are rules which you have to follow to give you the desired outcome. And I think that is something that machines can do much better and do it again and again and again with less fault than a human being does, because machines can work 24 into 7. Along with that, there is something called machine learning by which you train a machine. What does it do? Now imagine you are watching me on video. What happens? You are seeing an image on video of a particular person speaking to you. Now you may recognize the image because you've seen a photograph of the person or met the person. That means the image of the person is stored in your brain. You have 82 billion neurons in your brain, and the image is stored. So instantaneously, your eyes capture the image. It goes to the retina. From the back of the retina, it goes to the nerves and goes to your brain. The neurons connect, and immediately you say, this is so and so. Why? You've seen them before. Now, machines have cameras where they can see all the images. The images are stored in the, capacity in the storage area of the machine. And the machine compares this image with the images of the machine and comes and tells you, yes, this is the picture of the particular person. And that's how we get facial recognition. Facial recognition means the camera captures the image, takes the image, sends it to a server, and the server in the cloud compares that and come back and say, this is so-and-so person because the image is stored. The machine can be taught to recognize objects, recognize animals, recognize human beings, recognize cars, etc. And once the machines are able to recognize, they can do a lot of work. And that leads to the rise of robots. Robots are humanoid machines, whereby a machine can do much of the work that human beings do. For example, repetitive tasks like electronic assembly. They can lift heavy equipment. They can walk. They can run. For example, Boston Dynamics has got a mechanical cheetah which can do 65 kilometers. They got a mechanical horse which can draw a cart. You might have seen all that. They got a robo which can do a backflip. They got a robo which can play football, a robo which can dance, a robo which can do so many things because they've all been trained how to do it. Please remember, the human being is a very complex animal. There are so many things happening, the flexibility in your fingers, the ability of your brain to recognize images, the ability of your brain to connect, the memory capacity you have is very, very unique and very, very huge. All that is being duplicated in the form of robots who are trained to see with cameras, capture the image, and use the image to process and do many things and send signals across the robot to move his legs, move his hand, lift, and do many things. And once it keeps doing that, it'll keep doing that all the time. Srini and I, along with Aima, went to see the Tesla factory in Fremont, United States. And we saw large robots which are manufacturing cars. If we go to a car factory today, there are no human beings. A friend of mine went to a factory in China, which is 1 kilometer in depth by half a kilometer wide. It's very dark. And the friend asked the person there, oh, do you have a holiday today? He said, no, they're all working. Where are they? They're only machines working. Machines don't require light. Machines don't require light because they're by mathematical formulae. They can move their hands, move their widgets all around the place because the distances are covered and they can see in the dark, right? By using particular technology, night vision, and they can make things happen. And the entire production was automated. It went out, robots lifted it, put into a truck, and the truck drove by itself. In Germany, trucks are driven without a driver for 1,000 kilometers. There are autonomous cars coming where cars can drive by themselves. And Tesla has a great degree of automation. The car has become a piece of software. So you're going to have artificial intelligence, machine learning, which is going to change. And 60 to 70% of human activity can be done by machines in the near future. They're well on the way to achieving that in a very, very big way. And robots are going to do much of the work that people do, driving cars, working in the factory, pulling cars, and many things else that human beings do. And that's going to happen much faster than we think. The next thing that's going to happen with the automation is the availability of information on your fingertips. Now, when we went to college, we sat before a teacher in a class of 50, 60 people. The teacher had read all the books. So they came and taught us, and we learned, we noted down some things, we listened, whatever they spoke was captured and stored in a hard disk in your mind, and then we could recall it. At the end of the term, we went, they asked us a question, we wrote down everything faithfully. They gave a mark sheet and they gave us a ranking, and we went to the piece of paper, a degree, and we got jobs and possibly work. Now, that is the education model of the Industrial Revolution, where there was a need for people who had a certain amount of skills and knowledge. So they all went to college or school, and teachers taught them, and they got a mass card, and that gave them the skills to communicate, to do some arithmetic, to read and write, and to work and to think, etc., in a very structured manner. Now, much of the information that's given to you in schools and colleges is information available freely on the web. You have to memorize it. You have to store it in a hard disk. No, you can always go to the web and search for anything, and everything will be available to you. If you have a query, you can put the query on Quora or somewhere else, and they will answer. You can look at rich videos, which will do that. You can take your class at midnight, at 2 o'clock in the morning. You don't have to go to school within so-and-so period, because that information is there. But that information part of education is taken care of by this automation availability. Enormous amount of information is available on the web. And that means every human being has access to the information. In the Industrial Revolution, only those people who read books, who went to college had access, because they were all in the form of books in the library. Everything is available on the web. So the explosion of information, the explosion of interaction, the explosion of rich multimedia is going to change the way we think and we work. And all this is coming together in a very significant manner. Now, in this new world, what are the skills that we need to survive, to grow, and to prosper? Are we all going to be deprived of economic opportunities because machines are going to do work? Are the rich going to grow richer? Is there going to be accumulation of wealth in a few hands? Are we going to lose our jobs? Are we going to do many things? Are we not able to do many things that we could do? Well, I think, and my view is that automation and technology are going to be inputs to make us more productive. Many of the jobs that are available will go away. For example, in India, over the last 20 years, banks have grown 10 times their size. Profits have grown possibly 2 or 3 times because of bad debts. But then employment has grown only 5%. 10 times the size, but employment has grown only 5%. So the employment intensity in our economic growth is coming down. That means jobs are going to be very different kind of skills are going to be required. And the same kind of jobs are not going to come. For example, there were jobs in call centers 5-7 years ago. Now, if you go to a call center, there could be a chatbot or a automated piece of software which will answer all your queries and guide you, because that piece of software will be able to recognize your voice, will be able to understand what you're saying, will be able to translate your language into multiple languages. You've seen the famous ad where a person goes to Japan and speaks into the mobile in English, and out comes the Japanese asking questions in Japanese, right? So language translation into any language is going to be easier. So a lot of things are going to happen in that way. So in this new world, what are the skills that we need? First of all, I think we have to go back to basics. What makes a human being unique? A human being is unique because we're curious. Look at a young child. A young child, when he's born, when it grows up, starts crawling and walking, it's so curious. It asks the question, looks at everything with curiosity, learns, touches, feels, puts in his mouth, and learns. And when you see the child, it's amazing to see what the child is and how the child learns. The child retains curiosity. When the child becomes 3 to 4, we put the poor child into a school, into a play school. Then the teacher comes and tells the child, do 1, 2, 3, 4. The child gets beaten up. By the time they go to class 5 or 6, sadly, the child's curiosity is gone, because we have a structured mode of education. And very soon the child is told to do a certain thing in a certain way, and curiosity diminishes. So in this new world, we have to be curious. We have to retain our curiosity all our age, all our life, because curiosity will mean that you will have a learning ability throughout your life. Your mind will be alive. You want to see what is happening, learn what is happening, and that curiosity will allow you to have a problem-solving attitude. The most important asset a human being can have is to be curious and have a problem-solving attitude. Because in life, we come across many problems. So when you come across a problem, how do you solve the problem? You look at the problem, you analyze the problem, and you look at the data behind the problem. Then you come out with 3 or 4 solutions, apply the data to the solutions, pick the one which is most likely to solve the problem, and say, this is the way we have to go. And that's what managers do, that's what engineers do, that is what teachers do. Because in a class, if a child is not studying, the teacher has to understand why the child is not studying, what are the issues, and motivate the child to study, and structure the course program in such a way the child can study with a problem-solving attitude. So we must have a problem-solving attitude, which is only there if we retain curiosity. So education system has to change to make sure the child remains curious, throughout the schooling and leaves the class school with a basic amount of information and knowledge, but a very curious problem-solving attitude. More projects, more self-learning, guiding from the teacher, less structured information, and more time to do things on their own and to understand rather than unnecessary information being forced down the throat. An examination system will be based upon how problems have to be solved. The next thing we need to understand is basically how to use technology, because technology is going to permeate all our life. Now, we know that older people, when the lockdown happened, went to the mobile and could buy everything and do everything. They never tried to learn the skill, but they bought it because much of the software was intuitive. That intuitive kind of work. So we must learn how to use technology, not be slaves to technology, but learn how to use technology to have a more productive life and to have a better quality of life and to be more productive. So technology is going to be there in every facet of work. We got to learn how to use the technology to become more productive. Next is, we must develop life skills which are going to be very important. Communication, ability to think and to communicate, ability to interact with people, ability to work together with everybody else in a team, ability to network, etc. Because as problem solvers, we will have to mobilize resources to solve our problems. And the only way that can happen if we are able to network, we're able to communicate, we're able to have life skills. And that, I think, is going to be extremely, extremely important. And that will come when we learn certain skills which allow us to compete and allow us to live in a very different kind of society. The next thing which is required, in my personal opinion, is an ability to live in any part of the world. So many of us are living in a particular environment. We're very comfortable because that environment nurtures us. But now, when the opportunities to work in the environment becomes less, you have to look at the entire world as a platform and learn to live and work in any part of the world. It doesn't mean that you have to travel. What happened during the COVID lockdown around the world was employees who are working in factories and working together went away to their homes, and everybody started working using video conferencing and digital tools, right? So today, the world has become a common network where people can live in any part of the world and communicate to each other and work irrespective of time zone differences. That means you can work for somebody in the US, and somebody in the US can work for you, and you can get access to all kind of talent all over. So you should have an ability to understand the cultural dissimilarities and similarities between people, and the ability to talk, communicate, and work in different parts of the world. You should have multicultural skills and the self-confidence and ability to do that very well. Next is, a curious mind will lead to lifelong learning. Please remember, knowledge will be obsolete very, very soon in whatever you do. Whatever work you do today may not be there 3 to 4 years from now. The machine may be doing it. So you have to learn new skills. That means lifelong education, lifelong skilling has to be something. And if you have the basic building blocks like a curious mind, good communication skills, and a problem-solving attitude, you can learn new skills and you can be ahead of the game. And that means you should be able to learn lifelong and retain the curiosity. Because if you think that you're going to learn something that's going to be adequate for the rest of your life, is not enough, because things are going to change. Today, innovation cycles have come down from 36 months to 18 months. That means every 18 months, things change. Pokemon took 19 days to come to 15 million users. Ayushman Bharat, our health stack, our health app is taken 13 days to come to 50 million people. And one point of time, the airline industry took 60 years to come to 15 million people. The internet took some 14 years to come to 15 million people. So today, the pace of change is very rapid globally, because the innovation is coming up, new things are coming up. It's very difficult to keep pace. That means unless you have lifelong learning and a problem-solving attitude, you will not be able to keep up. And lastly, we must be very careful that we don't lose our human skills. As human beings, what makes it apart? Empathy, an ability to interact with people, ability to live with people, ability to be emotional and to connect with people emotionally, and a large ability to be compassionate and live together in society, not at the cost of others, but helping others as a community. So this feeling of community, the feeling of humanness should be very, very to be done in a big way. And to me, the biggest danger to humanity and to all of us is that we will go inwards into technology and become loners. That's because we spend a lot of time with our device, a lot of time on an electronic gadget. And doing that, the electronic gadget opens up to the world. So we don't feel the need to talk to people, to move with people, interact with people, communicate with people, because everything can be done electronically through video, and you can do everything in a full day. You don't have to go outside. You don't have to, go to the beach or sit in the sun or anything like that. You can be inside. And that makes you insular. The beauty of human being is the social interaction, ability to be together, talk to each other, have a nice cup of tea. No, those are important because as a part of what you become as a human being, you develop that human skills, and you must never lose that and become inward looking. That's why the metaverse, that is a new environment people are talking about, is something that is astounding to a person like me who's worked in technology for 30 years, and also shocking. I hope we don't become victims. So technology should not become a master. Technology should be a tool that we use to make our lives better and the lives of society better. And technology should never become a master, because technology becomes a master, all of us are lost. In China and in Japan, many young people are staying in a room the entire life and not going out. They're lost their ability to interact with people. They lost their ability to communicate with people. They lost the ability to be in a group. And it's all gone. They all look to the device and they see the world. And the world has become the distinction between the human being and a robot or a widget or an algorithm has got lost. And now people are saying we'll come close to singularity, where artificial intelligence and those technology will develop human-like skills and will be indistinguishable from human beings. Is the time going to come? It may come. It may take 7 years, 8 years, whatever it is, but that's going to happen. So we have to be prepared for the day. So we must make sure that we retain our humanness and the human qualities that keep us apart, because we are very, very unique. So I want to say that if you want to live and survive in the digital world, first you must be aware of what is happening, how the world is changing, how the world has changed, and what is going to come in the future by being well-read. Second, you must develop those qualities that allow you to prosper: curiosity, lifelong learning, problem-solving attitude, communication, life skills, cross-culture skills, etc. And then you must be able to adjust to new circumstances and treat the world as a single stage. And lastly, not lose your humanness and your connection to people, and be very people-focused and learn not to let technology become your master, but technology should become a tool for you to do things better. I think all these things are required. So we have to change the way. And the way to change is in the schools. We have to change the way we teach young people. We have to change the way we interact with people. We have to reduce the curriculum load. We have to retain the curiosity. And we have to make them adapt in technology. And that is how I think we will learn to live in the digital world. So I want to thank you for inviting me and listening to me.